Manchester City destroyed Liverpool 4-0 at the weekend, but was this destruction down to Pep Guardiola's genius tactics and getting everything right, or was it more down to Arne Slot getting things wrong? I think it's a combination of both, and obviously, Man City did play very, very well in this game. I'm very happy with the result, but we are going to start with one of the negatives today in terms of analysing it, and I think it's one of the very few negatives from this game, because like I'll reiterate, I think we did play very well, and I'm going to start with the press, because I don't think the press necessarily worked like a lot of other people did. I think people maybe do results-based analysis, look at the 4-0, and assume everything went really well. However, especially in those first 35 minutes, I thought our press was weak. We were playing the same structure we saw against Arsenal before the international break in the Carabao Cup, this 4-2-4 kind of thing, where we're not being proactive in the first phase. Instead, it's quite passive, and we're really focusing on just blocking these passing lanes into the midfield. For example, if Curtis Jones has the ball, we're blocking these off, right? Not letting it get through. And this worked really well against Arsenal because Arsenal played like this, right? They had the two centre-backs and the goalkeeper, and Kepa wasn't good on the ball. And I think it's a similar situation with Mamardashvili. However, Van Dijk is a much better ball player than Gabriel and Saliba are, so that's a factor we have to deal with, making it much harder. But also, I think Liverpool compensated very well for the poor nature of Mamardashvili's ball playing, and they did this by dropping either Curtis Jones a lot of the time, or even Gravenberch sometimes too, into the back line, past our first line of pressure to get the better ball players on the ball. And these guys have the quality, right, to be able to pick these passes through. And I think something else they did is used their quality in midfield. Like Arsenal had Erdegaard out, right? They didn't have these players who were going to read the game really well, like we have in Bernardo, take up intelligent positions to be able to bypass the press. However, I think Liverpool did have, whoa, what's happening there? I think Liverpool did have this in Florian Wirtz. He was really, really effective in terms of finding nice positions to be able to bypass the press, especially in those first 35 minutes. And I've got some in-game examples of this happening. If it switches, there we go. Here we can see Van Dijk on the ball, right? Much better ball player than Gabriel and Saliba. He was much more comfortable finding those through balls. And this is a combination of both things as well. You can see Wirtz dropping in, trying to get away from Rodri, and Van Dijk being able to play the ball into Wirtz. He can then knock it off to Curtis Jones, and Liverpool have taken the four Manchester City players out of the game, and they can have an attack. And here we see again, if it continues, this time Curtis Jones on the ball. Curtis Jones has dropped deep into past our first line of pressure to get on the ball and use his ball playing ability, and that's exactly what he does. He gets on the ball, and you can see here again Wirtz picking up a really intelligent bit of space, and Curtis Jones can find this ball. Wirtz can turn on it, and then he's got lots of forward options. It can go out wide to Kirk, it can go central. Once again, these four Manchester City players here are taken out the game because of quality ball playing from Liverpool. Here again, this time it's Van Dijk who's getting on the ball. We know how good he is from deep areas, and here he showcases it. Well, that's a City, but it doesn't matter. Big switch over to Mo Salah. Bang, again. Six Manchester City players even here, taken out the press. Salah in a dangerous 1v1 situation, Liverpool in a good attacking situation because our press was passive, and you can't give players like Van Dijk, who are so good, that much time on the ball. And yes, I said before, I don't think Mamardashvili is a great ball-playing goalkeeper, right? And I think in this game, most of the time he got on the ball, he did just punt it long and we won it back, so you could argue that it worked. However, I think this is a really good example of what will happen if we try and play this passive structure against a better team that have a better ball-playing goalkeeper, like a David Raya, like an Alisson, for example, because I think they'll just do this every time they got on, right? We know that switch out to the fullbacks is on every single time, and that's what Mamardashvili does here. He manages to find it, finds, I think that's Gomez in this position, and I think it was okay here, right? O'Reilly can jump up and then the defence shifts across. It isn't tragic. It's not like we're in an awful situation here, but it's not a good one to be in, right? Liverpool can go 1v1 against our back line. That's dangerous that you can also lay it off here, and you've taken out the first line of pressure, which is four players in, so therefore it's quite dangerous. And I think we'll just see this on a consistent basis against a better team, which is why I don't think this pressing structure can be consistently used in the Premier League. So now we've got the negative stuff out the way, let's get on to the positives, because there were a lot of positives, especially after the 35th minute. Almost everything was positive, and I think you could almost split this game into two halves if you like, but not traditionally like you would first half and second half. I think it was very much 0 to 35 minutes, and then 35 minutes onwards when the game changed. And it's interesting that it happened this way, because there weren't really any major tactical changes that happened in the 35th minute to trigger this. I think it was more Manchester City working out how to change the tempo of the game in order order to exploit Arne Slot's weak system, because there were a lot of Liverpool weaknesses out of possession, and we're going to delve into why that is now, because City, were playing in this, what you typically expect, the 3-2-5, and sometimes you have Bernardo Silva pushing up and it becomes a 3-1-6, right? Comme ci, comme ça, basically the same thing. And what you'd normally expect a team to do against this is set up in maybe a 4-4-2 mid-block, like I've got them in here, but that is not what Liverpool did. And the key is you'd expect them to be zonal as well, right? So you're defending the space rather than defending the man. You'd expect a man-to-man system, maybe in the final third in a press, but not really in a block. You wouldn't expect that at all, which is why I found it was really weird what Liverpool did, because it was kind of this hybrid system. It was sort of man-to-man. Yes, you have the back four as normal, but to try and limit Nico O'Reilly and Ryan Cherky, who are very dangerous players from us, what Arne Slot did is he called Curtis Jones to man-mark Ryan Cherky and Szoboszlai to man-mark Nico O'Reilly. But because O'Reilly and Cherky are playing so high, they're playing in the last line, what you ended up with for Liverpool is this 6, because they want to be 2v1 with Haaland, and then this 1-3 kind of shape. And there's an obvious problem with this, right? Because you're going 2v1 with Haaland, it means you're then 5v4 in this area of the pitch. So it was really easy for us to build up here because we have the spare man, and therefore being able to exploit all of this space and control the game nicely, which we did. And I think there was a turning point when we realized this, and this is why we gained control of the game, because we realized what Liverpool were doing basically, and the way we could exploit this is by slowing the game down. In the first 35 minutes, we were trying to be really direct, attack really quickly, and it didn't allow these weaknesses to really appear in Liverpool's out of possession shape. But as soon as we started slowing the game down, these weaknesses started appearing, and we exploited them really well. And there's a way we did exploit it, which I'm going to show you in the in-game examples. But firstly, I want to show you the moment where I think the game changed, and it was in the 35th minute, and it's because of James Trafford. Here you can see Liverpool are pressing relatively high. It's quite a dangerous man-to-man kind of ish press, and Bernardo Silva is on the ball facing his own goal. A horrible situation to be in. And what he does is he plays it back to James Trafford, and this is really important because what we see when James Trafford's on the ball is that the Liverpool player has to close down Trafford, right? And now we have an overload. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 Manchester City players against Liverpool's 3, and that is so useful because if you have a spare man, you should be able to play through the press. And I think Trafford does excellently well here because he waits for this pressure to come to, I think that's Mo Salah, but he waits until the last minute, until Salah is basically on top of him with the pressure, and then he shifts the ball. And what that does is it gives Kushnov loads of time. Just look at all the space around Kushnov. Salah is miles away to be able to put the pressure on, and this gives Kushnov options. He has time to be able to pick a good pass. He can play it to Nunes here, maybe not the most dangerous ball, but it's a solid ball. He can play it through here to Semenyo, which is what he actually does. If he's under pressure, he does not have time to play that pass, or he could have played in here to the Bernardo Silva, who has now become the free man because Gravenberch hasn't really locked onto his assignment, neither has Salah. And then, so this is Curtis Jones, sorry, not Salah, I don't know what I'm on about. Anyway, Kushnov finds that dangerous pass towards Semenyo, and then you get this chain reaction, right, of 3 men appearing from Liverpool having to shift, because now Kirkes has to pressure Semenyo in here, and the free man becomes Ryan Cherky, so Semenyo can knock it off to him, and then you have that chain reaction happening again. Now we see Florian Wirtz has to put pressure on Ryan Cherky, something he doesn't really want to do, so does Gravenberch, and then Cherky actually plays a really nice ball here. This isn't an easy pass by any means, but he's Ryan Cherky, and he finds Rodri in here, who's now become the free man, and then Rodri can find Bernardo Silva, Nico O'Reilly even over here, and you get this nice chain reaction, and just like that we've played out. And I think this was the turning point in the game, because we realised by playing slow we could exploit Liverpool's weakness, and this is something we did continually throughout the game, because like I mentioned before, even so, and then from that we got the penalty. We went 1-0 up. That's significant that I forgot. Anyway, like I was saying, to exploit the weakness of Liverpool's system, what we started doing later in the game was dropping really deep, because on the tactics board we talked about before how we have the overload here, and how can you maximize that overload? It's by dropping deep, right? If you have this line stretch, you drop this down here, maybe the line's a bit higher than that, right? It might be here, but still now we have more space, we can spread out, and it just makes these distances for these 4 players to cover cover even larger. Now it's impossible for them to cover all the distances. You can get Trafford involved as well, maybe. And then you have this 6v4, and it's really easy to be able to find these passes through. And that's exactly what we did. You can see here, we've dropped very deep. There's no one else in shot, and we have this free man. So it's really easy for Rodri to be able to find Bernardo Silva here. And just like that, we've played out. And this is something we were consistently seeing throughout the game to give Manchester City control. I want to finish by talking about Haaland a bit as well. Not only because he scored a hat-trick and was man of the match, but also because I think his build-up play in the game was so good. And I want to talk about the movement for his goals too, because again, that was excellent. Haaland is the movement king. It's always excellent, and it's the thing I love most, analysing Haaland's movement. It's great. But we'll start with the build-up play, because I thought he was really clever, especially in these situations like we just talked about, where we've dropped deep to try and exploit this. Occasionally, there was sometimes maybe Liverpool would send Curtis Jones up, right, and you get a 5v5, and they'd go this. What Haaland would do then is you'd see him drop off the first line into these deeper areas, because Konate doesn't want to follow him, because then he leaves this massive space that Cherki and O'Reilly can attack. So instead, what we saw is Haaland just being able to get free of Konate, and then that creates a nice passing lane into him. He can turn and drive at the defence, and we saw him do this quite a lot. I've got an in-game example here. Here you can see Liverpool have committed Curtis Jones and Szoboszlai a little bit to the press, but Haaland has dropped off the defensive line here, and he's making himself that passing option for Rodri. We beat the first line of pressure because of it. Haaland can then turn, and he can drive at the defence, and I think a chance comes from this. I can't really remember, but either way, Haaland was doing this all throughout the game, and it was really good play from him. However, I think the best thing he did in this game was his movement for the goals. This is his third goal to complete the hat-trick. We're going in unchronological order for some reason here, but the movement for this one is amazing. You can see Haaland is here. Initially, he's behind Van Dijk on his blind side. This means Haaland has the flexibility to be able to make this run and be able to make this run as well, and it makes it really difficult for Van Dijk because he has to keep scanning to be able to know what Haaland is doing. He's just in a tricky defensive situation, and this is exactly what happens, right? Doku plays O'Reilly in behind, really nice ball, and we can see here Haaland is still on the blind side. He still has the flexibility to make either run at this point, which is great. It's fantastic striker play, but it's more likely he's going to make the run across the front of Van Dijk, and Van Dijk knows this, so he gambles to defend the space, because otherwise O'Reilly can shoot as well if he doesn't get across, right? But Haaland's movement is fantastic. Instead of just running directly across the front, what he does is he pauses, and he just lets Van Dijk's momentum traveling forwards, and in doing so, he creates this separation, which then allows O'Reilly to square it to him and Haaland to score the goal. It's brilliant movement. If you haven't watched it, go and watch the goal, because it's amazing. The deceleration, I think only a couple players on the planet can move like that, and that's what makes Haaland so good. However, the second goal is my favourite goal. Obviously, we're not going to analyse the penalty movement because there isn't any, but I think the movement here is amazing. It starts with this little bit of magic from Cherki to play Semenyo through, who makes a really clever run here, actually, to go around the back of Kerkez instead of around Cherki. I love that from him. But look at Haaland in the box, right? Again, he's managed to isolate himself with Konate 1v1. Here, Liverpool have made a defensive error, actually. Curtis Jones haven't tracked his run, and that dragged Van Dijk out to allow Haaland to get 1v1 in the middle, which is significant because you back Haaland against Konate. VVD is Liverpool's best header of the ball, so taking him out of the situation makes it much more favourable for Erling Haaland. But again, on the blind side, like we just talked about him with Van Dijk, it means he can go here towards the back post, or he can go here towards the front post, and he maintains this until the very last second. This is when Semenyo's about to cross the ball. Haaland can still go here or here. He's still on the blind side, and ultimately we know he steps across, he gets his arm across Konate, stops him having any momentum, which allows him to get to the header first easily and head into the goal. It's great movement from Haaland again. But anyway, that concludes this analysis of the game. If you think I've missed anything, let me know in the comments down below, and hopefully we'll try and correct that next time. But thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you hopefully for Real Madrid and Bayern Munich later today.